All right, guys, welcome back to RTW's Wild History Ride. I'm Thomas.
I'm Will.
And I'm Rhonda.
And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about the Vikings. Ragnar Lothbrok in particular. Mainly because with the series, it's not HBO, I'm sorry. It's the History Channel.
The History Channel.
Yeah.
The History Channel's The Vikings show. I've kind of became obsessed over the years.
You got me on it.
But before we get into it, I want to say thank you guys so much for listening. Thank you guys so much for subscribing and checking us out and sharing. And I hope you guys keep sharing with us and with all your friends. Don't be afraid to hog the aux cord and play us.
Shoot, I do that. I have been listening to a whole bunch of episodes on the way to work lately.
Yeah. So don't be afraid to just kind of hold your friends or family hostage in the car with the aux cord and play whatever you want. Hopefully us.
Only us. That's it.
But I do want to mention this milestone that we actually broke this week. We are now over 700 views, and we actually blew it out of the water. We got several more views than we usually do.
Okay, let me correct you. Not views, downloads.
Downloads.
Okay, fine. Downloads.
This is the digital age. We got to stay on top of it.
All right, y'all. All right. I apologize. So we've had more downloads than we were expecting with the new episode, and we're very grateful.
But there should be a new logo or something, too.
Yes, we got a new logo. Supposedly, Apple Podcasts is going to upload it and update it, but I haven't seen it yet on Apple Podcasts. I have definitely seen the logo, and I love it. Shout out to Bo.
Yeah, who did it?
It was Bo, your older brother.
Bo and his heels.
Oh, no.
Okay, that's an inside joke. Apparently, in an earlier episode, I made fun of Bo's height. I don't remember doing it, but I'm sure I did it.
Listen, Bo's pretty stout now. You got to be careful.
Well, I make that joke to his face, and he knows it.
No,
so
that's true. That's true.
I love Bo very much, and I will pick on him until I die. But if you don't love somebody, you don't pick on them. It's just how it is.
Exactly.
So we're going to get into this episode, and we're planning on splitting it up into two, and we'll probably do multiple Viking episodes and not do them as two-parters like we've been doing with the Tudors. Instead, we'll do it kind of like a mini series that we release whenever we want to do. So we'll do Ragnar and his kids for the next couple weeks, but then sometime down the road we'll tackle another famous Viking or another event in Viking history. Mm-hmm. Yes.
I have a request. If you're going to do the Viking men, then I think you need to do an episode on the Viking women, unless you're going to touch on those as you go through the kids and all that.
Oh, I'm going to touch on two in particular while talking about Ragnar.
Okay.
So, with that being said, let me check my time real quick before I get started so I know where I'm at. Oh, sweet. Okay. I'm less into it than I thought.
Good.
So, we will start off with Ragnar and his very, very brief history of his family. Now, watching the show Vikings, you remember a character, Aud, or however you pronounce her name. Mm-hmm. She was in Iceland with Floki and her family. Her dad was played by Edge.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, see, historically, Aud the Deep-Minded...
Wait. Edge. Who's Edge?
A wrestler. His stage name was Edge.
Adam Copeland.
Yeah, his stage name was Edge. He's a great actor. But historically, her name was Aud the Deep-Minded, and she was, I believe, Ragnar's great-grandmother. So that's the very first historical inaccuracy
discrepancy that they have in that show.
Yes, so her father was named Ivar. She was the mother of two sons, with her first husband, who was there was some trickery involved. Now, she had a thing for her first husband's brother, but she respected her marriage and stayed faithful. Well, her father, who wanted to conquer the kingdom, tricked her husband into thinking that she'd been unfaithful with his brother, and so he killed his brother. I forgot to even bother with their first husband's name.
Is this Hatfields and McCoys?
And
this is a lot of drama.
I know already.
We're just getting started.
Baby mama drama.
So Ivar, taking advantage of the chaos, murdered his daughter's husband and conquered his kingdom. Well, with this happening, Aud took her son Harold and ditched the country. Now, keeping in mind, back in this time, a king didn't necessarily mean that they were in charge of the whole country or continent. There could have been multiple kings of Norway, Sweden, Denmark, all this.
Yeah, I was like, well, how big of a kingdom are we talking about here?
So it doesn't exactly specify. But her first son was Harold Wartooth, and then she married her second husband, who gave her the son Ranvir. Now, Ranvir was the father of Sigurd Ring, who would go on to become the father of Ragnar. Now, he was from Denmark on his father's side, but his mother, Asa, was descended from a Norwegian king. So eventually, through multiple wars, his father died. Oh, wait, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm looking. Yeah. He became he was the chief king of Sweden and the sub-king of Denmark. So that basically means that, yes, he was a king in Denmark, but there was a king with more land, more warriors, and more powerful than him.
Yeah.
And that was his uncle, Harold Wartooth. Well, a great uncle, I guess. They fought. Again, I don't know why my notes say this, but it's talking about the Battle of Breva as though it was Ragnar, but it was Sigurd who fought his uncle. Mm-hmm. Sigurd killed his uncle. Ragnar was not king yet. I apologize for that mix-up. For some reason, I had their names switched. So Sigurd was the one who fought his uncle. He was the king of Sweden, sub-king of Denmark, killed Harold, and became king of Denmark and Sweden.
Is this the King Harold in the show too?
Nope, we'll get to him.
Oh,
We'll get to him the next episode.
This is convoluted.
I know, because they all had similar names. You're going to have like 7 different Sigurds. So what will typically separate them is their surname or their title.
Yeah,
So
because
you
I know,
have-
yeah.
So you have Harold Wartooth, and the one you're talking about is Harold Finehair.
Okay.
So
I like Wartooth better than Fine
Well,
Hair.
it's because he had incredibly long hair that
Was he
refused
balding?
to cut.
Was
No.
he balding? Oh, okay.
No, it was just incredibly long, and he refused to cut it.
Was he balding?
Was he balding? Fine Hair? Thomas Fine Hair.
So, yeah, a very fine hair.
Back in
But,
the day. Baby.
So Sigurd ruled Sweden and Denmark, and then he died. His son, Ragnar, was very young at the time, so he faced a ton of civil wars. A lot of other kings were like, hey, he's too inexperienced. He doesn't know what he's doing. We've got this.
Mm-hmm.
He handled it a lot better than they expected. He was able to fight back the civil wars. Now, in most of the stories, they don't really talk about his leadership, which I take to mean that more than likely he spent most of his life on expeditions.
Yeah.
Traveling to the Baltic regions and England, which I believe the Vikings first started going into England in the early 800s, late 700s.
Yeah.
I might be off by a century. I might be thinking of 7th century instead of 700s.
Yeah.
But, so they'd already done it. Whereas in the show Vikings, Ragnar was the first Viking to actually make it to England.
When I remember, in the show too, it's like from what you're saying, he started off as a farmer.
Yes,
yeah.
whereas in history, he was a prince.
Yep. So, it's already a discrepancy there that I learned.
Now, keeping in mind that when we say history, it's their oral history.
Yeah.
It's their legends. So there are multiple historical figures that could have been Ragnar Lothbrok, but we don't know who he really was. It's kind of like King Arthur. There was a historical King Arthur, but it wasn't like the Lamort the Arthur, King Arthur.
Yeah.
He was a Welsh war chief, not really a holy, graceful king that was blessed by God.
Yep.
He was a, more than likely at the time period, a pagan war chief. So
Makes sense to me.
all right, so the first real experience with him is his uncle through his, if it's Sweden, it would have been, I believe, his dad's mother. Or no, his dad's, one of his dad's relatives. A king of Sweden named Sigurd was killed by a usurper named Fro. Now, Fro, being the jerk that he was, forced all the female family members and servants and the ladies that were around Sigurd to basically be forced to work in a brothel as a form of humiliation. So Ragnar, finding out about his grandfather's death and usurpation, decided, okay, we're not going to play that game. So he gathered several guys to go with him to Sweden. And when they arrived, the women were just pissed off enough to put on men's clothes, grab some weapons to fight with, and joined Ragnar to kill this guy.
I bet.
Well, the one that stood out the most was Lagertha.
I know her.
Now, she did nothing to hide the fact that she was a woman, whereas several of them at the time did, because they wanted to get into the ranks of the army. She didn't care. She just grabbed some clothes that she could fight in, got her weapons, and she charged, and she was on the front lines, cutting people down.
Okay, now she was a real person?
She was a real person. According to the legends, she was a real person.
Catherine Winnick.
So, yes, and she's great. Love her. She's
I
a great
do too.
actress. But moving forward, she made such an impact on Ragnar that he's like, "Oh, I gotta get me some of that." And hey, just saying.
It's like a Mulan situation almost.
So she, according to the stories, she feigned interest in him and basically told him to come to her house. Well, when he got there, he was attacked by a bear and a hound. Now, it never specifies. I'm hoping that they were not her pets.
My pet
And
bear.
that they were just guarding her house for her. I'm hoping that it was just some wild animals that she knew would be around if he was loud and boisterous like most men are and would attack him. I'm hoping. Because I would hope nobody was crazy enough to send their pets to attack somebody that could possibly kill them, which Ragnar did.
Yeah.
He took his spear, he killed the bear, and then he choked the life out of the hound.
Aww.
And so he then married Lagertha. They had
And then he married. She's like, oh my God.
they had 3 children, Fridleif and 2 daughters that are never talked about.
Because they're women. That's another thing. I'm telling you, Miss Rhonda, I'm telling you, we're going to have to get on these
I
people.
know. I need to do some more women empowerment.
I know. That's the next one. That's the
Podcast.
next one.
So, okay, Ragnar went back to Denmark, where he had to fight a civil war because he'd been gone away too long, which seemed to be a recurring theme with Ragnar.
Yeah, so who would be in charge of his kingdom
It
or
would
whatever?
be whatever chief he put in charge. Because remember, they're broken up into chiefdoms
Yeah.
and jarls and thanes and all that. They have different titles. But the fact of the matter is, a chief is somebody who's in charge of a band of warriors. Mm-hmm. Then you have a jarl who's in charge of a really big band of warriors.
I remember he was a jarl in the show for a while.
Yeah, he became a jarl. He was more than likely what would be called I think it's a skuttelsvaner,
Ooh.
which means a table man. So in the beginning, yes, he was a farmer, which meant he was very wealthy on the show, and he was considered a table man because he would be allowed to sit close to the jarl.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause that happened a lot. He actually questioned the jarl on a regular occasion on the show, which meant that he thought he had enough sway with the people to be able to do that.
Yep.
So even though it portrays him as a farmer and they kind of try to make him look a little bit lower, he was probably one of the highest ranked men in the show in that community. So he would have had people like that, people he trusted in charge. But again, they thought he was young and
Irresponsible and
inexperienced, so they would attack. Mm-hmm. So he returned to Denmark, fought back the Civil War, and he more or less dissolved his marriage with Lagertha, which was a fairly common thing back then, because they didn't have like a real divorce proceeding. You basically just said, "We're done," and our marriage is dissolved.
Yeah.
Like you could have just said, "We're not married anymore." That's it.
So, hey,
And-
listen, more suitable than the Tudors.
Yeah. So that is when he got. There was a chieftain who had a daughter named Thora, and her beauty was amazing. Got Ragnar's attention, and he basically said, "Anyone that can rescue her from this tower can marry her." The reason that was such a challenge was he had some giant. Depending on the source, it was a lindworm, a serpent, a dragon. Regardless, it was some big reptile that was venomous.
Yep. Yep.
So that's where Ragnar comes up with the idea to get some baggy clothes, some super baggy clothes, treat them with tar and sand, and he puts them on so that the venom can't penetrate his clothing. He has the shield to guard his exposed flesh, and he manages to slay the serpent and marry Thora. Now that is where he gets his nickname Lothbrok, which means baggy or shaggy breeches.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that sounds a little bit better than Ragnar Shaggy Britches.
yeah. So he would have been called until then. He would have been called Ragnar Sigurd's son.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Of House Munso, because that was his family house, was Munso, which I think Björn was the only one to actually use or any reference that I can find. But Ragnar and Thora had several kids, depending on the sources, because we have the Icelandic sources, the Danish sources, the Swedish sources. We have the English sources. So
Yeah.
some of them, in some of the stories, he's got like 13 sons. In others, he has 4. And so it's kind of some denominator of that. So we're mostly just going to refer to the main ones Ivar, Björn, Halfdan, and Sigurd as his sons. We'll probably talk about Ubbe a little bit, Ubbe, however you pronounce his name. But in some sources, he wasn't actually a son, and we'll get into that into the sons episode.
Yeah, because that'll be the part 2.
So as far as we're concerned right now, he had 4 sons with his third wife, 1 son with Lagertha, and then he had 2 sons with Thora. Their names were Eric and Agnar.
Agnar. I've never heard. Have I heard of those?
No, the only time you would have heard them would have been for me. Agnar.
Oh, okay, yeah. I need Oh, by the way, I just wanted to let you know I looked up a Viking name generator just a second ago.
We'll go to that in a minute, dude. I'm trying to
I'm gonna
move as
get
fast
this
as I can. So that was in Sweden. Thor was Swedish. He returned to Sweden where there's another civil war, and he has to call upon an unlikely helper, which is actually shown in the show, where he sends out help after his community is taken over by another Jarl. He asks Lagertha for help. And she comes because a part of her still loves him and cares about him. And she brings 120 ships with her.
Oh.
Now, in the fight, again, there's another son that we don't have any recollection of named Seward. He got injured, and she jumped through all these people and killed everyone that was about to kill him. So, again, she's proving that she is amazing. Which, yes?
Okay, question. So she had at her disposal
120 ships.
Was she wealthy, or was she over a large
At that time,
landholding,
she
or
was
what?
married to a Jarl.
Oh, okay.
Believed to have been married to a Jarl.
But he did not come with her on this trip.
No. And
killed
what I'm
her.
about to tell you next might lead to some questions.
Okay.
She returned home to Norway, and her husband and her got into it, and she finally had enough, and she killed him.
Wow.
Oh, I remember that in the show.
So what I'm thinking is the soldiers liked her better. He probably said, no, you're not going to go help your ex-husband. And she took the soldiers anyway, and when she got back, he got in her face about it, and she said enough and killed him.
Well, I remember that in the show. I don't think it was
Yes.
was it around those same? I guess she helped Ragnar in the show, wasn't that what she did?
Yes, she did.
Yeah, so that one was pretty accurate.
Now, Thora got sick and died. And that is when shortly after Ragnar met Aslog. Now, according to the legend, she was the child of a man by the name of Sigurd the Slayer. He supposedly slayed the dragon Fafnir, and his wife was named Brynhildr.
I do know her.
She was in some stories, she was a Valkyrie. In some, she was just some amazing shield maiden. Regardless, they died. She was raised by someone they trusted who hid her inside of a harp. And this peasant couple, thinking that he had valuable objects hidden inside the harp, murdered him and opened up the harp to find a little girl. And they decided to raise her as their own and named her Kraka, which means crow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she was apparently some stunning beauty, which they took to mean that she had to be a noble. So to protect her, they would cover her in tar and make her look dirty and
my
things like
gosh.
that.
Tar.
Because they were scared that she would be hurt.
Okay.
So they raised her as their own and took care of her. And until some of Ragnar's men accidentally spotted her bathing. And she was so breathtakingly beautiful that they left some bread that they were baking for Ragnar and let it burn. And when they had to explain to Ragnar what happened, he decided, okay, I want to meet this girl, but I want to see if she's as wise as she is beautiful. So he gave her the task of showing up, dressed but undressed, fasting nor eating, and alone nor in company. Now she arrived wearing a fishnet around her body, an onion in her mouth, and a dog as her companion.
Aww.
So he decided, okay, she's great. So that's when they had the 4 famous kids: Ivar, Halfdan, Björn, and Sigurd.
They got some low standards. I'm just saying.
Possibly Ubbe.
I'm like, they have very low standards.
Ragnar fought many battles. And again, it doesn't seem like he was much of a king in some of the stories. Whereas in others, it seems as though he would conquer somewhere, install one of his kids as a sub-king there, and move on to the next place. He was never where he should have been.
The next shiny thing.
Yes. So while he was gone, he put his cousin, who was the son of Harold Wartooth, I would question why anyone would want to put him in charge, but he put him in charge of his kingdom. Ragnar's sons with Thora, Eric and Agnar, showed up and said, give us our kingdom, and your daughter marries Eric. He said no. And in the battle, Agnar ended up dead, and the guy, Eystein Belly, told him, okay, I don't want your brothers to come seeking revenge for Agnar's death. How about this? I give you all of Uppsala, which is a part of Sweden that you want, and you can marry my daughter, and we'll just kind of forget this ever happened. And Eric said, no, I've been humiliated too badly to accept that. The only way I can get rid of my shame is if your men hoist me up on spears and let me die. So they did.
That's exactly what they did.
Yeah. So
don't ever say that around. They'll do it. They did some crazy stuff.
Okay, dude, let's do this.
They have a culture of honor and shame and all this. So they kind of got to be impressive. So if losing a major battle and getting your butt whooped and your brother dying, it's like, okay, you're just going to give me a consolation prize, even though this is exactly what I asked for. It's kind of insulting. So, I mean, think about it. They gave him what he wanted, but after whooping his ass.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like,
I'm just like, ugh.
Okay, so Ragnar's kids with Aslog found out about this, and Aslog decided to lead 150 soldiers personally by land, while her sons led the ships by sea to attack Eystein Belly, and they did. They conquered it all and avenged their brothers. Now, Ragnar found out about this, and in other sources, his decision was based off of some things that happened in Ireland. But the story we're going off of is because he was so frustrated by his children being so successful without his aid that he wanted to prove that he was still just as impressive as them. So he takes two Gnarls, I believe is what the ship is called. They're big cargo ships. Mm-hmm. Instead of taking a whole bunch of long ships that can go up the channels, he takes them and tries to invade England, Northumbria to be exact.
With two ships?
Yes. And so he attacks, and his guys don't make it.
Yeah.
He gets his butt whooped. Supposedly, according to the story, none of his soldiers were skilled enough in fighting to kill Ragnar in battle. So they just kind of outnumbered him until they could kind of capture him, which is weird to me. At that point, I would have just started stabbing the hell out of him. If I was one of the enemy soldiers.
I guess they knew who he was.
Yeah. So they captured him, and Ela, king of Northumbria, had a grudge against Ragnar because Ragnar had killed his father.
Yeah.
Hama, however you pronounce it.
Huma.
And decides to humiliate him by not killing him in battle. Instead, he executes him by throwing him into a snake pit.
I do remember that.
How long did that take?
Well, supposedly a couple days, because the snakes never bit him. So it got to the point where Ayla's soldiers grabbed their spears and started stabbing the crap out of him until there were enough openings in his clothes and the snakes were agitated enough to bite him. Mm-hmm. And there he slowly died. And he is supposedly quoted as saying, "Oh, how the little pigs would grunt if they heard how the old boar suffered." His death is listed as 865.
Well, I'm just like, you brought it on yourself. You brought it on yourself.
I mean, yeah.
Ragnar.
Yeah, it's just what it is.
He kind of was like that in the show, though. Like, he would get really brash and stuff like that, I feel like,
Well, in the show, they portrayed him more as an intelligent figure.
Yeah, he was very intelligent in the show.
It's just, a lot of the times on the show, he did things just because he had to do them. He knew they weren't going to succeed. Like the first invasion of Paris.
Yeah.
He knew it wasn't going to succeed. He did it because he wanted to show Floki that his plan was flawed. And then there was another one. It was his death scene. It was his death. He knew he wasn't going to survive it, but he had to do something big enough to make a point. His whole purpose in the show with going to England, even though he knew he wasn't going to survive, was to rile up his kids enough to attack.
Yeah.
So they portray things differently. But that is my Ragnar Lothbrok.
I love
and we
Ragnar.
we will talk about his sons in the next episode.
Oh, okay.
Y'all got any quick questions before I wrap us up?
So I like Asog a lot better in the actual history than I do in the show.
Well, in the show they kind of portray her more how Thora was portrayed. This beautiful woman that doesn't really do much.
Yeah.
Trophy wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all the women are good for, right, Rhonda?
Yeah,
I'm just like, that's so stupid.
Yeah, right.
I'm just like, listen, you know what? So I said that will be the next episode, the women empowerment Lagartha episode.
That's kind of what we've been leaning towards. But all right, guys. Thank you all so much for listening. We will get out the Sons of Ragnar Lothbrok next episode. I believe we have Rosie the Riveter and Then Some is out now.
Yeah.
So check them out.
Oh, and then our little Q&A.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we have a Q&A where you guys can get to know us a little better.
I know it. That's what I wanted. Yeah. Oh, whatever. Whatever.
Just saying.
Shoot, Thomas is always on that social media nowadays.
No, I'm not.
His biggest thing.
All right, guys. Catch you next time.
All right, bye.
Till next week.